I went from planning our wedding to being single in just 7 hours. This is my story. I never thought I'd be sharing this story, but here I am. I'm Paul, 34 years old, and this is how my world turned upside down in the span of 7 hours. It all started on Hinge, like many modern love stories do these days. I remember sitting on my couch after another long day at the software company where I work as a project manager, mindlessly scrolling through profiles. That's when I saw her, Amy. Her profile picture showed her laughing genuinely at something off camera, her brown hair catching the sunlight just right. What caught my attention wasn't just her looks, though. Her profile was thoughtful, mentioning her love for true crime podcasts, weekend hiking adventures, and how she couldn't live without her morning coffee ritual. I had been specific in what I was looking for: someone independent but family-oriented, career-driven but able to leave work at work, someone who could make me laugh but also engage in deep conversations. Looking at Amy's profile, it was like reading a checklist of everything I wanted. I spent an embarrassingly long time crafting my first message to her, something about how her hiking photos reminded me of a trail I'd recently discovered. She responded within an hour. We moved from Hinge to texting within a day, and by the end of the week, we had our first date planned at this little Italian place downtown called Giuseppe's. I remember arriving 15 minutes early, nervously adjusting my blue button-down shirt in the reflection of my car window. She arrived right on time, wearing a simple black dress that made her look effortlessly elegant. The connection was instant. You know those first dates where you're constantly checking your phone or thinking about what to say next? This wasn't one of them. We talked for hours, starting with the usual first date topics but quickly diving deeper. She told me about growing up in a small town 2 states over, about her close relationship with her younger sister Sarah, and her dream of eventually opening her own marketing consultancy. I shared stories about my family, my failed attempts at learning guitar, and my secret passion for baking sourdough bread during the pandemic. The waiter had to politely hint that they were closing before we realized we'd been there for almost 4 hours. Standing outside the restaurant, neither of us wanted the night to end. We went for a walk around the nearby park, and under the streetlights, I felt like I was 16 again, full of butterflies and possibility. That first date set the tone for everything that followed. We saw each other again 2 days later, then 3 times the following week. Within a month, we had naturally fallen into a rhythm. Wednesday night was always dinner at one of our places, weekends were for exploring new restaurants or taking day trips to nearby towns. We discovered we both loved antique shopping, though she had much better taste than I did. I still have the vintage clock she helped me pick out for my living room. Our friends started joking about how disgustingly perfect we were together. My best friend Mark, who's usually skeptical about relationships after his own divorce, pulled me aside at his birthday party and said, "Man, I've never seen you like this. She's the one, isn't she?" I couldn't even argue. He was right. The first year was a collection of those perfect moments you dream about when you think of finding your person. We took our first vacation together to the coast, spending a week in a tiny beach cottage. One evening, walking along the shore at sunset, Amy turned to me and said, "I could do this forever with you." I remember thinking how right it felt, how natural. We had our disagreements, of course. She was more spontaneous than me, sometimes wanting to drop everything for an impromptu weekend away when I preferred to plan things out. I could be too focused on work, occasionally missing social cues when she needed emotional support rather than solutions to problems. But we always talked things through. We had this rule: no going to bed angry. Even if we had to stay up late, we'd work it out. As we approached our second year together, everything seemed to be falling perfectly into place. We had started looking at houses together, agreeing that renting separate apartments didn't make sense anymore. I remember the Sunday afternoon we spent creating a shared Pinterest board for home decor ideas. Amy had very specific thoughts about having a reading nook with a bay window, and I was already imagining where I'd put my home office. I'd been ring shopping for weeks, secretly meeting with a local jeweler to design something perfect. Amy had mentioned once, offhandedly, how much she loved her grandmother's vintage sapphire ring, so I incorporated that into the design: a center diamond flanked by 2 smaller sapphires, set in white gold. The jeweler had just called to say it would be ready in 2 weeks. We'd even started having the kids' conversation. Not in a pressure-filled way, but in those quiet moments before falling asleep, we'd talk about names we liked, how many we'd want, whether we thought we'd be good parents. Amy would talk about wanting to take a year off work when we had our first, and I'd already started researching the best school districts in the area. Looking back, I should have noticed when things started to change. It was subtle at first, so subtle that I convinced myself I was imagining it. About 3 weeks ago, Amy started taking longer to respond to texts. Our good morning and good night messages, which had been a daily constant for almost 2 years, became sporadic. She'd be on her phone more when we were together, but would quickly put it face down if I came near. Then came the physical distance. Amy had always been affectionate, hand-holding, casual touches, curling up together on the couch. But suddenly there was this invisible barrier. She'd shift slightly away when I'd try to hold her hand, or say she was too tired to cuddle while watching TV. Small things, but they felt wrong. I did what I thought was right. I asked her about it. We were having dinner at her place, something she'd picked up from that Thai place we both loved. "Is everything okay?" I asked, trying to keep my voice casual. "You seem a bit distant lately." She looked up from her pad thai, and for a moment, I thought I saw something flicker across her face. Guilt? Fear? But then she smiled, though it didn't quite reach her eyes. "Just stressed about work," she said. "We've got this huge campaign launching next month, and my boss is being particularly demanding." It made sense. Amy had mentioned this campaign before, and I knew how important it was for her career. So I did what any supportive partner would do. I believed her. I offered to help where I could, brought her favorite coffee to her office one afternoon, tried to give her space when she said she needed to work late. Last weekend, everything seemed normal again. We spent Saturday morning at our favorite farmer's market, planning meals for the week ahead. Amy was laughing at my terrible attempts to juggle oranges, taking pictures to send to our friends. We spent the afternoon helping my sister move into her new apartment, and then had a quiet evening at my place, ordering pizza and watching that new mystery series Amy had been wanting to see. Sunday was equally ordinary. We had brunch with her friend Rachel, went for a walk in the park, and then Amy had to head home to prepare for a Monday morning presentation. Our goodbye kiss was normal, our I love yous exchanged as always. Her last text that night was perfect. "Good night, I love you, I can't wait for the rest of our lives." Then came Monday morning. I woke up to 2 messages that changed everything. The first, "Paul, we need to talk." The second, "I've been doing a lot of thinking, and I need to be honest with you. I do have strong feelings for you, but they're not the same feelings you have for me. I'm not feeling this relationship anymore. I'm so sorry to do this over text, but I need to be clear, I'm done." I read those messages at least 20 times, trying to make sense of them. How do you go from "I can't wait for the rest of our lives" to "I'm done in 7 hours"? How do you end a 2-year relationship, a relationship where we were planning a future together, through a text message? I called her. Of course I called her. It went straight to voicemail. I texted back, asking if we could talk about this in person, trying to understand what had changed so dramatically overnight. Her response was brief: "I'm sorry, but I've made my decision. Please respect that." The ring is still sitting in the jeweler's shop. Our shared Pinterest board is still active. Half of my clothes are already packed in boxes, labeled for a move that won't happen now. There's a bottle of her favorite wine in my fridge that I bought for our next date night. Her coffee mug is still in my kitchen cabinet. The vintage clock she helped me pick out is still ticking on my wall, marking time in a world that suddenly makes no sense. I've been through breakups before. My last serious relationship ended after 3 years when we realized we wanted different things in life. That hurt, but it made sense. We had conversations about it, we tried to work through our differences, and when we finally ended things, it was mutual and face to face. This feels like being pushed out of an airplane without a parachute. The worst part isn't even the breakup itself, it's the complete dismissal of everything we built together. 2 years of shared dreams, inside jokes, future plans, all erased in 2 text messages. No explanation, no chance to understand or work things out, just done. My sister keeps telling me I dodged a bullet, that someone who could end things this way isn't someone I should want to spend my life with. My friends are angry on my behalf, offering to take me out drinking, suggesting I block her on all social media. Mark offered to let me crash at his place if I need a change of scenery. But right now, I'm sitting in my apartment, surrounded by half-packed boxes labeled with a future that won't happen, trying to figure out how to process this. The rational part of my brain knows that if this is how she feels, then this is for the best. The emotional part of my brain is screaming that none of this makes sense. I keep replaying every moment of the last few weeks, looking for signs I might have missed. Was she already planning this when we were at the farmer's market? When she was taking pictures of me juggling oranges? When she said goodnight and that she couldn't wait for our future together? The thing about love is that it makes you trust. When Amy said she was just stressed about work, I believed her because I loved her. When she seemed distant, I gave her space because I loved her. When she said she couldn't wait for our future together, I believed her because I loved her. And maybe that's what makes this so hard to process, the complete mismatch between what I believed and what was actually happening. I've crafted and deleted about a dozen messages to her. What do you say to someone who can dismiss 2 years together with 2 text messages? How do you get closure when the other person won't even give you the dignity of a face-to-face conversation? So here I am, 34 years old, with a custom engagement ring I can't return, a heart I don't know how to mend, and a story I don't know how to end. They say time heals all wounds, but right now, time is just the ticking of that vintage clock on my wall, marking seconds in a future I have to reimagine without her. I should know how to handle this. I've been through breakups before. I've helped friends through breakups. I've given advice about breakups. But this feels different. This feels like waking up in a parallel universe where the last 2 years meant something completely different to her than they did to me. The crazy part is, I still love her. Even after this, even after she ended things in probably the most cowardly way possible, I still love her. And I don't know what to do with that love now. Where do you put love that suddenly has no home? I'm not writing this for advice or sympathy. I'm writing this because maybe somewhere out there, someone else is going through something similar. Maybe they too are staring at their phone, reading messages that don't make sense, surrounded by the debris of a future that evaporated overnight. And maybe they need to know they're not alone in feeling this lost. For now, I'm just trying to breathe. Trying to accept that sometimes life doesn't give you the answers you need, that sometimes people you trust completely can still hurt you in ways you never expected. Trying to figure out how to unpack boxes that were meant for a different future and repack them with whatever comes next. I don't know what that next chapter looks like yet. Right now, I can barely see past this moment, past the blinking cursor on my phone where I keep trying to write messages I'll never send. But I know I have to find a way forward, even if I have to do it one breath at a time. The clock Amy helped me pick out is still ticking on my wall. Maybe that's all any of us can do, keep ticking forward, even when we don't know where forward leads.